beautiful this morning, a little earlier than I've been up in the last couple of weeks. Today is a swim day for my exercise, and I'm trying to get to the pool early because if you don't get it early, it gets crowded. Nobody likes swimming with a dozen other people in one lane. Swim shorts and cowboy boots. Check it out. I'm an emo. Good swim this morning. Fast. Although it smelled kind of weird in the pool. I don't know why. Not in the pool, but like the air right above the pool where you have to breathe. Just smelled funny. I'm pretty sure it wasn't me. Headed downtown. Get some coffee. A little breakfast. Yeah. Driving with long hair. I haven't had to do this in ages. Ah! Ah! Time for breakfast. Goat story mug. Transformation. Boom. Man, slippery table. One of the reasons I like my goat story mug is you can just clip it to like anything and it'll just hang out, leak free, and keep your coffee warm. And you give a barista your goat story mug, you invariably get some sort of interesting reaction, and I always want to know where it came from and what it is, because it looks like a goat's horn and it's kind of weird looking. I don't know, maybe it brightens their day to do something with a mug that isn't just a normal coffee mug. Who knows? But goat story. Alright, internet, let's talk a little bit about piezography, also called Piezography, which is interesting because of the way it's spelled, P-I-E-Z-O, which you would think would be piezography, not piezography. Not that the pronunciation matters, I guess. I promised that we would do a little bit more of an in-depth look at this. We have some materials that we put together to show our clients the differences between piezo, which is all I'm going to call it. Just to call it piezo. Can we agree to that? Between piezo and standard inkjet printing. So the main difference here is piezo is all carbon. It's not a pigment-based ink, it's a carbon-based ink. And there's all the words you can read on the website, and I'll link that below. But basically, piezo is 7 shades of black and gray ink. And a standard inkjet printer will have 2, maybe 3, depending on the printer. We're printing on some relatively old printers, the Epson series, 9880 and 7880. One's a 24-inch and one is the 44-inch. And we've never really been into printing inkjets in black and white because you just can't get the detail. And since we print darkroom process, we know what details should be there. We know what details possible in a black and white process, and you just can't get it with a standard inkjet. So we discovered piezo a couple months ago, 3, 5, 6 months ago, something like that, and have been sort of playing around with it and experimenting and learning and seeing what we can see. And it has several major advantages over, normal inkjet printing. One, it's true black and white. There's no green or weird color cast to the black and white because it's black and white. And 2, it's more archival because it's carbon based. It's not the pigment. There's no pigment to fade. It's carbon, and carbon's going to last a long time. So I'm told the piezo prints will last as long as silver gelatin prints, possibly longer. I mean, we're talking hundreds of years in terms of the archivability here, and not, decades, which would be standard inkjet, or most standard inkjets. So I've got some material here I wanted to just kind of point out so you could see what we're talking about. But first, let's go look at the printer here. So this is our 7880, and I have, all of our ink slots are labeled. On a standard printer, let's just go look at the normal color we have. You pull out an ink and it looks like that. Okay? One, you can't see how much ink is in it. And two, it tells you it's cyan and it says a lot of words about it. Here, we get to mix and match our own inks, so you can see exactly what shade number 6 looks like. Shade 3, shade 5. The light black, which right now is a glossy overprint. We'll talk about that in a second. But basically these are user refillable cartridges. So if I need to add something to a cartridge, I open it, I pull it out, I break the vacuum seal, and I add more sustenance to the printer. So I've got 4 shades here. Actually, it's 3 shades of gray ink and a gloss optimizer. And on the other sides, I have the other 4 shades of gray and black ink. What we're using here is called the Special Edition set of inks, which is slightly warmer. It's kind of designed to mimic a selenium tone or a platinum palladium, depending on what paper you're printing on and which profiles you're using. So that's what the printer setup looks like. Unless you go in and mess with your inks, and you can mix and match and make your own shades and do that, which is something you definitely can't do on standard inkjet. And then I've put together just a couple of examples here. The light in this room is horrible and the light on my camera is horrible, so I'm going to use an additional light source just to show you some of the detail here. So this is standard inkjet, okay? Nothing fancy going on. You'll notice if we look in the whites, it's extreme highlights, right? This is the top 2 to 10% in 2% increments of highlights that a printer could be possibly able to show you. You'll see there, it's pretty severe change, but there is change in all of them. But in the blacks, you don't really see any change. I can mess with the light here and kind of try and show you, but you can't really tell any delineation. It's just one big black blob. And that's the problem with standard inkjet. Same thing here. We're going from 92 to 100% in single percent increments, 1%. And aside from the scratch, which don't believe the scratch, it's just pretty much a big black blob. You can't see anything. Versus you look at the highlights, there's your 1% increments on the highlights, and they do a decent job. But still, like, you know, from 9% to 8% is pretty severe. If we look over to Piezography, we'll start in the 2% again. They're not quite as severe in the amount of change, so it seems to be doing a better job with a 2% increment in the highlights. But then in the blacks, you can actually see change. You can see individual rings of the 2% increments. And then if we go into 1% increments, see those lines, those rectangular goofy lines in there, aside from my fingerprints? You can actually see the 1% changes, which is something a standard inkjet can't do. And then if you look at the highlights here, get the light right, they're much more subtle, but again, you can see every step, every delineation is pretty carefully marked out. Just hard to get the light right to show it off. So in real life, when you look at these on a print, you'd look at your standard inkjet print here, which one is glossy, and I hate glossy, but you'll notice how the blacks just sort of block up. Like there should be some great detail there, and it just sort of blocks up into nothing. Whereas if you look on a piezo print, and I've done this on matte paper, there's no blocking up in the blacks. There's good detail, and there's not, you know, it's got good contrast and still shows off, you know, everything that's there, but there's detail. You can actually see everything. And then for comparison, since this process is supposed to mimic platinum palladium, I've done the same image in an actual platinum palladium print. And you can see it doesn't quite have the same contrast, but it still also has that detail and that beautiful tonal graduation that the piezo does. And again, the tonal graduation, you're looking from the darkest dark to the lightest light, and it's just so smooth. Versus the actual platinum palladium doesn't quite have the same amount of contrast, but again, very smooth tonal graduation. And the standard inkjet just blocks up into nothing. You can't compete. And so that is why we print piezo. People who want good detail, excellent longevity, and like a really good black and white print, but you don't necessarily want to pay the price for platinum palladium or silver gelatin prints. because that stuff gets really expensive. So the Piezography is sort of our happy medium and a good introduction to people. God, I say a lot. The proofing process with Piezography actually ends up being a lot like one of the more difficult processes, platinum, palladium, and silver gelatin, where you can send me your picture, and if I just print it straight from the way you think it's supposed to look, it's going to look horrible. It's the worst. So there's some proofing that goes into the system to make sure that we can translate it into a good looking Piezography print. But it's not necessarily as severe as what goes into making a good platinum palladium print. There's always a translation from here's how I want the image to look to here's how it needs to be manipulated to look that way. And so with Piezography, John Cohn, who invented the process and is the guy behind all the magic, basically says you got to proof as you go, which is the smartest way to do it. We start all of our proofing at 8x10. So we take your image, print it 8x10, and see, okay, here's where we need to go with it after we've made our first pass in Photoshop. And then you move from there. And then once you've got your 8x10 dialed in, then you nuke it out to the full size, whether that's 16x20 or 30x40. Right now, we're only offering Piezo on a 24-inch by whatever basis because we only have it on our little 24-inch printer. But maybe someday we'll put Piezo inks in the big printer, the 44-inch, and then we can do all kinds of crazy stuff. But anyway, that's a little introduction to Piezo and what goes into it and a little bit about how we do it and why we've chosen to offer it, where traditionally we've done very little inkjet. Anyway, yeah, well, I got an install to go to here shortly, and maybe I'll show some of that installing art in a commercial building. Whee! There's only one thing that I want that I shouldn't want. Very clean. Oh, God. Blizzard. But there's no need for that. Just got off work. Not a lot interesting happened. The install did happen, but I got too sucked into doing the installation to like show the installation. So maybe I'll get better at that. Who knows? I'm on my way home. Let's talk a little bit about the myth of busy. And by that, I don't mean that there's no such thing as being busy, because obviously there is. Everybody's been busy, in, I'm sure, many ways. But what I've been thinking about by sitting here and carving a little bit out of my new pipe blank is busy really the ideal state? Everybody talks about how busy they are. Oh, how you doing? I'm so busy. I don't think that should be, one, an acceptable, and two, a desirable answer. Why are you busy? Are you busy just for the sake of being busy? Busy because you got to work so much so that everybody knows how busy and how important you are? Is busy the same thing as important? I don't think it is. I strive in my lifestyle to have a balance between working and busy and have a lot going on and relaxing, preferably in a hammock or also on a beach. It just seems to me that everyone's always chasing after busy, and I may spend 6 days a week at work currently, but that doesn't mean that I'm always busy, and that I'm so important because I'm always busy. At work, not only do I work at a job that I really enjoy and where I get to have a lot of fun, but we value sort of the opportunity to have a break. If you're in the middle of a big project and you need a 20-minute break to go do what you got to do, great. We encourage people to do that. If you're at work and you're waiting around for clients to show up and you don't have anything that you really need to be doing, great. Yeah, you could probably clean the bathroom and whatever, but as long as it all gets done, it doesn't have to happen right now. You don't got to be busy at work just because you're at work. I don't think there's any reason that we can't enjoy what we do to the point where a work-life balance is achieved by being able to live and do work kind of whenever. And I feel like there's kind of two trains of thought where there's either work and there's play and the two things are totally separate, or there's sort of a work and play where kind of you're working a lot of the time and kind of you're playing a lot of the time. I feel like more and more as I move forward, especially with buying into this business and some of the things that are going on there, I'm going to end up with that kind of balance where, yeah, I'm kind of working all the time and yeah, I'm kind of playing all the time, and they're not necessarily super delineated super differently. If I have to come in on a Saturday or a Sunday to deal with a client, great. If I have the opportunity to go and hang in my hammock or go on a trip somewhere cool, great. You know, it's getting windy out here. Just, thoughts as they cascade through my head about busy and the levelness of desire that goes along with that, and whether that's really what we ought to be chasing after as people, especially as creatives. People who do creative things like photography, writing, music, whatever, they need time to recharge. And time to recharge typically doesn't mean time being busy. So I value and I encourage the people around me to spend time recharging. If that's reading a book, great. If that's out hiking the Grand Canyon, great. Whatever that is for each individual person. I don't know. Just thoughts. Yeah.